When colonial powers ruled colonies in Africa, they often named streets, towns, and even cities after the names of famous colonial leaders. Since those colonies were subjected, those colonial powers could do whatever they wanted. Things did not stop at exploiting the natural resources, and tactics were put in place to name streets that would keep the colonial leaders' legacies alive. However, Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré knows how to handle this. After kicking French troops out of the country, he started a wide operation to rename all the French street names. But he isn't stopping right there. He is honoring the revolutionary leaders who were assassinated by designating the streets' names on their names. This might seem something simple, but in reality, it's a loud announcement that Burkina Faso won't even allow French names to stay in the country. But what did Ibrahim Traoré announce after, which has shocked the Western world? Let's know the whole story. Burkina Faso's military government has brought about a significant change by renaming a prominent street in the capital, Ouagadougou. Boulevard Charles de Gaulle, which bore the name of the French colonial-era leader, has been replaced with Boulevard Thomas Sankara, in honor of the Pan-Africanist icon and former president. This renaming ceremony occurred on Sunday, coinciding with the 36th anniversary of Thomas Sankara's tragic assassination. During the event, Burkina Faso's transitional president, Ibrahim Traoré, paid tribute to Thomas Sankara, describing him as a man of vision, an enduring source of inspiration for the African people, especially the people of Burkina Faso, in their pursuit of complete sovereignty. In addition to unveiling the new street name, President Traoré laid the foundation stone for a mausoleum dedicated to Thomas Sankara. This action to decolonize street names and remove references to French colonial figures mirrors similar efforts in other former French colonies like Ivory Coast and Senegal. In Ivory Coast, the names of former French presidents Valéry Giscard d'Estaing and François Mitterrand have been replaced with those of local figures, including the first Ivorian president, Félix Houphouët-Boigny. Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko also took the initiative to remove Charles de Gaulle's name from an avenue, renaming it Peace Street, during his tenure as mayor. Daouda Traoré, a retired colonel major and vice president of the International Thomas Sankara Memorial Committee, lauded Burkina Faso's military leadership for this decision. In his view, the renaming of the street to honor Thomas Sankara reflects the dignity and sovereignty of the people and aligns with their anti-imperialist principles. Charles-André Joseph Marie de Gaulle was a French president, after whom the street name in Burkina Faso was named. It was because colonial powers were in a habit of literally changing everything on an excuse to make things more modern. By naming streets and towns in Africa after their leaders, they were honoring them, but undermining the culture and arts of the colonized country. Even to this day, various African countries still have remnants of their colonial powers. Until now, the majority of people didn't know about Thomas Sankara, their real hero. Thomas Sankara was born on December 21st, 1949, in Yako, which was part of the French Upper Volta at the time. He was the third of 10 children born to Joseph and Marguerite Sankara. His father, Joseph Sankara, worked as a gendarme and had a mixed Mossi Fulani heritage. His mother, Marguerite Kinda, was of direct Mossi descent. In his early years, the family lived in Gawa, a town in the humid southwest where his father served as an auxiliary gendarme. Their family had a relatively privileged status because his father was one of the few African officials employed by the colonial state. They resided in a brick house on a hill that overlooked Gawa, along with other gendarme families. Sankara's primary education took place in Bobo Dioulasso, where he was a dedicated student, excelling in subjects like mathematics and French. He was a frequent churchgoer, and his enthusiasm for learning left a strong impression. Some priests encouraged Thomas to consider entering seminary school after completing primary school. Although he initially agreed, he later decided to take the entrance exam for the 6th grade in the secular education system, which he successfully passed. This decision marked a significant turning point in his education. He continued his studies at the nearest lycée, Ouessane Coulibaly, named after a pre-independence nationalist, located in Bobo Dioulasso, the country's commercial center. At the lycée, Sankara formed close friendships, including one with Fidel II, whom he later appointed as a minister in his government, and Suman Touré, who was in a more advanced class. Despite his Roman Catholic parents' desire for him to become a priest, Sankara chose to pursue a military career. The military was a popular choice at the time, having recently played a role in ousting an unpopular president. Many young intellectuals saw it as a national institution that could potentially help reform the inefficient and corrupt bureaucracy, balance the excessive influence of traditional chiefs, and contribute to modernization. Furthermore, joining the military academy came with a scholarship, which was crucial as Sankara couldn't easily afford further education otherwise. He successfully passed the entrance exam. In 1966, at the age of 17, Sankara enrolled in the military academy of Kadiogo in Ouagadougou, becoming part of its first intake of students. During his time there, he witnessed Upper Volta's first military coup, led by Lieutenant Colonel Sangoulé Lamizana on January 3, 1966. The cadets received instruction from civilian professors in the social sciences. Adama Touré, the academic director at the time, invited some of his brightest and politically inclined students, including Sankara, to engage in informal discussions on topics like imperialism, neo-colonialism, socialism, communism, the Soviet and Chinese revolutions, and liberation movements in Africa. This exposure to a revolutionary perspective outside of the classroom marked Sankara's first systematic encounter with such ideas concerning Upper Volta and the world. Alongside his academic pursuits and extracurricular political interests, Sankara passionately pursued music and played the guitar. In 1970, at the age of 20, Sankara proceeded with his military studies at the Military Academy of Ansarabe in Madagascar, where he graduated as a junior officer in 1973. The curriculum at the Ansarabe Academy extended beyond conventional military subjects, allowing Sankara to study agriculture, crop yield improvement, and strategies to improve the lives of farmers. These themes would later become central to his policies and administration. During this period, he delved into extensive reading on history and military strategy, acquiring the concepts and analytical tools that he would later apply to his re-evaluation of Burkinabe political history. He was later dispatched to Madagascar for officer training in Antsirabe, where he had the chance to witness popular uprisings in 1971 and 1972 against the government, led by Philibert Tsiranana. While in Madagascar, Sankara also delved into the works of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin, leaving a profound and lasting impact on his political beliefs. Upon his return to Upper Volta, which is now Burkina Faso, in 1972, he became involved in a border conflict between Upper Volta and Mali by 1974. Although he gained recognition for his role in the conflict, he later distanced himself from such warfare, viewing it as useless and unjust, reflecting his evolving political awareness. During this period, he became a popular figure in Ouagadougou, the capital. In 1976, he took on the role of commander at the Commando Training Center in Po. During this time in 1976, he crossed paths with Blaise Compaoré while both were in Morocco. Under the presidency of Colonel Saye Zerbo, a group of young officers clandestinely formed an organization known as the Communist Officers Group. This group included notable members like Henri Zongo, Jean-Baptiste Bukari Lingani, Blaise Compaoré, and Thomas Sankara. Sankara's journey into government positions began in September 1981, when he was appointed as the Minister of Information in Saye Zerbo's military administration. He set himself apart from other government officials in various ways, such as biking to work daily instead of using a car. While his predecessors tended to censor journalists and newspapers, Sankara encouraged investigative journalism and allowed the media to publish their findings, even when it exposed government scandals. This approach led to the publication of various exposés in both privately owned and state-owned newspapers. Nevertheless, he resigned on April 12, 1982, in protest against what he perceived as the regime's anti-labor direction, declaring, "Misfortune to those who gag the people." Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Following another coup on November 7, 1982, which brought Major Dr. Jean-Baptiste Ouedraogo to power, Sankara was appointed as Prime Minister in January 1983. However, he was dismissed in May 1983. During this short period, Sankara urged Ouedraogo's regime to implement more progressive reforms. Subsequently, he was arrested after a meeting between the French president's African Affairs advisor, Guy Penny, and Colonel Yaurien Some. In addition to Sankara, Henry Zongo and Jean-Baptiste Bukari Lingani were also detained. Sankara's arrest proved highly unpopular among younger officers in the military regime, ultimately leading to a coup facilitated by his friend Blaise Compaoré. In August 1983, a coup orchestrated by Blaise Compaoré brought Sankara to power as president at the age of 33. This coup received support from Libya, which was on the brink of a conflict with France and Chad. As president, Sankara saw himself as a revolutionary and drew inspiration from figures like Cuba's Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, and Ghana's military leader Jerry Rawlings. He championed the democratic and popular revolution and emphasized an anti-imperialist ideology. Sankara's policies were centered around fighting corruption and promoting reforestation. On August 4, 1984, the first anniversary of his presidency, he officially renamed the country Burkina Faso, signifying the land of upright people in the Moure and Dioula languages, which are the two primary languages of the nation. He also introduced a new flag and composed a new national anthem. His policies were becoming a threat to the West as he was making his country powerful and independent. Therefore, he was assassinated. In 2017, the government of Burkina Faso officially requested the French government to release military documents related to Sankara's assassination, following accusations from his widow that France orchestrated the killing. In April 2021, 34 years after Sankara's assassination, former President Compaoré and 13 others were indicted for their involvement in Sankara's murder and other crimes during the coup. This development was part of President Roch Kabore's National Reconciliation Framework. In October 2021, the trial against Compaoré and 13 others began in Ouagadougou, with Compaoré being tried in absentia. A week before the trial, Compaoré's lawyers stated that he wouldn't attend, citing defects in the trial and his privilege for immunity as a former head of state. After defense attorneys requested more time to prepare, the hearing was postponed until March 1st. On April 6, 2022, Compaoré and 2 others were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison in absentia, while 8 others received sentences ranging from 3 to 20 years. What Burkina Faso is today is due to Thomas Sankara, who was never honored as much as he deserved. But Captain Ibrahim Traoré knows how to honor him, and he is following in the footsteps of his inspiration, Thomas Sankara. You should know that not only the names of the streets, but the entire Burkina Faso culture and traditions were changed due to colonialism. Today, people do not know what lay before France colonized Burkina Faso. That's what colonial powers do. They erase the earlier history and portray that they were the ones who modernized the regions and made them inhabitable. But you must know the truth. The northwestern part of what we now call Burkina Faso boasts a deep history dating back to 14,000 BCE, with its early residents being hunter-gatherers who left behind a variety of tools like scrapers, chisels, and arrowheads. Agricultural communities gradually began to take shape between 3600 and 2600 BCE. During this period, the Boura culture, an Iron Age civilization, thrived in the southwestern part of modern Niger and the southeastern region of present-day Burkina Faso. By 1200 BCE, sub-Saharan Africa had already established an iron industry for smelting and crafting tools and weaponry. The oldest evidence of iron smelting in Burkina Faso, dating back to 800 to 700 BC, is now a part of the ancient ferrous metallurgy World Heritage Site. From the 3rd to the 13th centuries CE, the Iron Age Boura culture held sway in the southeastern part of Burkina Faso and southwestern Niger. Various ethnic groups, including the Mosi, Fula, and Dioula, arrived in waves between the 8th and 15th centuries. The Mosi people, for instance, founded several distinct kingdoms starting in the 11th century. The precise timelines of when Burkina Faso's diverse ethnic groups arrived in the region are still a matter of debate. For example, the Proto-Mossi settled in the eastern part of the country between the 8th and 11th centuries, while the Samo arrived around the 15th century. The Dogon inhabited Burkina Faso's northern and northwestern regions until the 15th or 16th centuries, with many other ethnic groups also arriving during this period. During the Middle Ages, the Mossi established separate kingdoms, including Tenkodogo, Yatenga, Zandoma, and Ouagadougou. These Mossi warriors carried out a raid on Timbuktu sometime between 1328 and 1338, but were ultimately defeated by Soni Ali of Songhai at the Battle of Kobe in Mali in 1483. The 16th century saw the Songhai conducting numerous slave raids into what is now Burkina Faso. In the 18th century, the Guirico Empire emerged in Bobo Dioulasso, and ethnic groups like the Dian, Lobi, and Birafor settled along the Black Volta. In the early 1890s, during the European scramble for Africa, various European military officers made efforts to stake claims in what is now Burkina Faso. These colonists sometimes clashed with local populations, while at other times, they formed alliances and treaties with them. European colonial officers also made agreements among themselves. The French invasion of Burkina Faso led to its establishment as a French protectorate in 1896. The eastern and western regions, which faced challenges in dealing with the powerful ruler Samori Touré, came under French control in 1897. By 1898, the majority of the territory that is now Burkina Faso was nominally under French control, although French authority remained uncertain in some areas. The Franco-British Convention of June 14, 1898, delineated the modern borders of the country. The conquest of French territories involved about 5 more years of conflict with local communities and political powers. In 1904, the mostly pacified territories of the Volta Basin became part of the Upper Senegal and Niger colony of French West Africa during the reorganization of the French West African Colonial Empire. French became the primary language for colonial administration and education. The education system had modest beginnings, with advanced education mainly available in Dakar during the colonial era. That's when France started a full-fledged war against the natives' culture, arts, and tradition. Indigenous populations faced significant discrimination. For example, African children were forbidden from riding bicycles or picking fruit from trees, privileges that were reserved for the children of colonists, and breaking these rules could lead to parents being imprisoned. The territory's inhabitants, including draftees, played a role in World War I as part of the Senegalese Rifles battalions. Between 1915 and 1916, the western districts of what is now Burkina Faso, along with the eastern bordering region of Mali, became a significant center of resistance against colonial rule during the Volta Bani War. The French government eventually quelled the movement, although they faced setbacks and had to mobilize their largest Colonial expeditionary force to suppress the rebellion in the country. The Sahelian North witnessed armed opposition when the Tuareg and allied groups in the Dori region terminated their truce with the government. Later, the French Upper Volta was established on March 1, 1919, primarily due to concerns about the potential for another armed uprising and economic factors. To reinforce their administration, the colonial government separated the present territory of Burkina Faso from Upper Senegal and Niger. This new colony was named Haute Volta because of its location along the upper reaches of the Volta River, encompassing the Black, Red, and White Volta rivers. François Charles Alexis, Edouard Hessling served as its inaugural governor and initiated an ambitious program to improve infrastructure by building roads. Additionally, he promoted the cultivation of cotton for export. However, the coercive approach to cotton cultivation failed, leading to stagnant revenue in the colony. On September 5, 1932, the colony was dissolved and its territories were distributed among the French colonies of Ivory Coast, French Sudan, and Niger. Ivory Coast received the largest share, including most of the population and the cities of Ouagadougou and Bobo Dioulasso. In response to the significant anti-colonial agitation following the end of World War II, France reversed its decision. On September 4, 1947, Upper Volta was reinstated with its previous borders as part of the French Union. The French designated their colonies as departments of metropolitan France on the European continent. On December 11, 1958, the colony achieved self-government as the Republic of Upper Volta and became part of the Franco-African community. A reorganization of French overseas territories began with the Basic Law of July 23, 1956. Subsequently, the French Parliament approved measures in early 1957 to grant a high degree of self-government to individual territories. On December 11, 1958, Upper Volta became an autonomous republic within the French community. It gained full independence from France in 1960. By then, French colonizers had changed literally everything, from culture, language, arts, history, and ethics. One enduring legacy of colonialism is the introduction of European languages. In Burkina Faso, during the era of French colonial rule, French became the official language. It displaced many indigenous languages in education and administration, significantly impacting the country's culture and communication, including education, media, and governance. Colonial powers also frequently introduced Christianity to the regions they governed. In Burkina Faso, missionaries played a key role in spreading Christianity, leading to the conversion of a portion of the population. This left a lasting impact on the country's religious diversity and practices. What's more, the colonial education system promoted European values, history, and culture, sometimes suppressing indigenous knowledge and traditions. Burkina Faso's educational system was shaped by the French model, influencing both the content and methods of teaching. To this day, the educational model being followed in Burkina Faso is French. This shows how colonizers paralyze and wipe out what existed before them. This is done to ensure that once they leave, those colonized countries follow the same pattern they were following. Hence, whether they remained colonized or not, the system effectively put in place in those countries ensures that they can never get out of the trap. But this isn't working in Burkina Faso, as its military leader is paying attention to even the most subtle details, to ensure that the former colonized could never think about getting rid of colonial legacies. The former colonizer created internal problems. One of those is that the colonial powers drew artificial borders in Africa, often disregarding existing ethnic or tribal boundaries. These borders sometimes led to tensions and conflicts among different ethnic groups, continuing to affect social and political dynamics. The economic systems introduced by colonial powers, including cash crop agriculture and mining, left a lasting imprint on Burkina Faso's economy. These changes influenced land use, labor practices, and resource exploitation. European art forms, aesthetics, and architectural styles influenced artistic expression in Burkina Faso. Some indigenous art forms adapted to incorporate elements of European art. This resulted in undervaluing the native art, creating feelings of considering it inferior. But Europeans knew the real worth of those art pieces which they took with them. The legal and administrative systems imposed during colonial rule still underpin Burkina Faso's governance structure. These systems have shaped the administration of justice, land ownership, and the functioning of government institutions. Now, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has initiated his mission to decolonize everything, from streets, legal system, economic system, political system, arts, culture, and history, to everything that was impured by the French. What do you think? Should other African countries that were once colonies rename their streets? Isn't it true that these names, given by colonizers, were meant to always keep the colonial legacies alive? Let us know your thoughts on what more subtle colonial traces are there that should end. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.